Welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Life, where today we'll be talking about this lovely specimen which is in bloom and, well, it is a plant you can technically put in your garden, which is normally what we focus on. However, since I've had this plant, I don't think it's ever bloomed before, and when I covered it with the other aloes the last time, it was a lot smaller. Okay, so this plant's scientific name is Aloe Grassie Lassie. Grassie Lassie would be in quotation marks or something like that. And it's a cultivar. I have not been able to find any information on what was crossed or selected to make it. But I do know, since its parentage is unknown, we have to just go by the name, Grassie Lassie, which it's named because it kind of looks like chunky grass. But we do know that it was bred by Kelly Griffin, who does a lot of succulent breeding. Now, aloes are a succulent, not a cactus. We'll get into that later in the episode. Anyway, it is in the family Asphodelaceae, which, if you pronounce it like it's spelled, let's just say you might get thrown out of a botanical Latin class. It's kind of a verbal mess, but that is the aloe family, basically. Now, its parentage is native to South Africa, which means it would, if it had hybridized in the wild and was just selected, we don't know, it would be native to South Africa, but it's here now in North America. It is hardy in USDA zones 8 through 11, and depending on who you talk to, it's hardy to a temperature of 20 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, but we know for a fact from multiple places that it is safe to 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Around here, in Zone 8A, it's hit or miss. It may be a perennial, it may not be a perennial. It may be something that you have to protect with mulch or a plastic row bell cloche cover, something like that. One of those 3-liter soda bottles with the bottom cut off, plastic jug with the bottom cut off, maybe. Just as long as it doesn't get too moist, because moist is bad when you're talking succulents. Consistent cold and moisture is bad. Correction. Anyway, its soil pH preference is 7 to 8.5, and it prefers a well-drained soil. Now, I've said this before, don't buy cactus soil. Potting soil will do as long as you moderate your watering. That 7 to 8.5 is actually the pH range for its cousin, aloe vera. However, since it is an aloe, I suspect that its pH range preference isn't that different. So there you go. Little pelletized lime in there every so often should do the job. If you're using potting soil, that's probably as close to neutral as possible, and then you can just knock it a little over. Anyway, its exposure is full sun, but it'll also take light shade. And that's full southern laser sun. Though in the spring, once it's warm enough, I would slowly introduce it to that laser sun over time so that it doesn't scorch. Because succulents can actually scorch. And no matter what you do, even with slow introduction, they're going to look awful for a while. They're going to turn a funny color. That's normal. Its height is up to 1 foot, which this one, discounting the flower stalks, is maybe 6 inches. Its width is a foot, which this specimen clearly is. And it started out as one specimen, it's multiple pups growing in that pot. Now, what we do know is that it flowers, obviously, in February. And look at these flowers. They are pink with a little bit of green and a little bit of yellow, and it just sort of fades in. It's darkest at the back of the trumpet and lightest at the front. They're bellflowers, so hummingbirds would love these, but unfortunately in our climate, the hummingbirds don't tend to show up for another few months. But this plant is known to repeatedly flower over the course of the summer, or so I've been told. We shall see. Now, again, the flowers can be a range of pink, orange, apricot, green, yellow. It depends on the specimen, it depends on the light exposure, it depends on a bunch of factors. The variegated form of this plant is called Splashy Lassie. You see what they're going with here. The edibility of it is unknown. I have no idea if the gel can be made into drinks or anything like that. I haven't tried it. I have not had the compulsion to do so. However, if you've had the compulsion to do so, I'd love to hear back from all you lovely gardeners out there. Its medicinal uses are also unknown. Again, I have not had the chance to burn myself and needed aloe vera treatments. I have actual aloe vera. It's not doing very well because the kittens keep eating it. Yeah, you're guilty. You're guilty. The kittens keep eating it. And by the way, aloe vera and impatiens are fairly safe for kittens to eat, and they will chew on them. Anyway, I digress. So, about aloes. Now, there are a few aloes you can put out for most of the year in the ground, especially if it's around stonework or structures that keep the temperature above a certain level. This apparently is one of them. Good. It's not something you put out by the road where it's exposed to the full elements, and I'm not sure you can bury it in pine straw like you would a perennial banana plant out in the landscape and hope for the best. What I would recommend is having it in a large pot and being prepared to move it in when it gets super cold, which it will, briefly, as evidenced by that 20-degree week we had. 20-degree or less week we had, correction. As for the potting soil, don't buy cactus mix. Just use regular plain old potting soil that does not have moisture retention features to it. I say that because you really don't want it to retain moisture. You want it to be fairly organic so the roots can dig into it, but not basically make it so it doesn't dry out. You want it to dry out fully between waterings. Aloe veras and aloes in general don't exactly wilt. What they'll do is the leaves will get a little soggy. So you're going to have to reach in the pot and stick your fingers in the dirt, which I know all you gardeners have no trouble doing, and feel it out, literally. Additionally, do not fertilize during the winter months. That means at about October, stop. If it's in the ground, stop in September. If it's in a pot, stop in October. Even then, do not give succulents in general a lot of fertilizer because they will overgrow. It'll be tender growth that will then either get attacked by insects or be damaged when you move it around, or the weather will damage it if it's outside. So just don't do those things. And lastly, this plant has bloomed in the greenhouse. Okay? It was not under grow lights. It was actually in the side of the greenhouse that has no grow lights whatsoever. It gets ambient light and morning sun directly. Beyond that, nothing else. So it is subject to the natural photo periods that you would expect of a plant like this. So that tells you what you can do to induce it to bloom. Now, will it continue blooming over the course of the summer? We're going to find out this year. It's going out once it's warm enough and stays warm enough. But in the meanwhile, I'd love to hear what you think of Grassie Lassie. So please, if you've got any thoughts about using it, if you've consumed it, if you know if it's medicinal, please leave a comment in the comment section. If you like this episode, please hit like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. There's more content coming. And as always, folks, keep them growing. Oh, and don't forget to hit up the Forage blog. We're doing this week was a major discussion of prickly pears, which is fascinating because that's our native cacti. And by the way, I said I would get back to this. All cacti are succulent, but not all succulents are cacti. That's the rule of thumb, and it's a legit rule. Anyway, if you like this episode, again, subscribe. And of course, thanks for watching.